Well, hello again from here inside St James's Park, where Barcelona are training just over my shoulder there. Sadly, without Lamine Yamal, I am absolutely in the camp who would prefer to see Yamal playing tomorrow night, but they're being put through the paces there by coach Hansi Flick, who I've just spoken to downstairs, and I asked him about Nick Woltemade. A very interesting answer there. We'll get to that. We'll also get to what Eddie Howe and Bruno Guimaraes said when they spoke to the press downstairs. Some really interesting stuff to come out of that, including an update on Yoane Wissa's injury as well. But before we go any further, and I do think this is the right stage to address it, and I'll do it only once, and I want to make this point, and that is about the new Champions League format which came in last season. Now, I was walking in to the stadium about an hour ago, and there was a supporter there waiting to see the Barcelona players get off the bus, and he said to me, "Big game tomorrow night, isn't it, Craig?" And I said, "Yeah, it is," but I went back and I actually challenged him, and it brought out what I felt about this. Yes, of course, it's a big game. You can attach that phrase to it, but I think it's a bigger occasion, and I'm more looking forward to everything around it and the feel of Champions League football being back at St James's Park in the isolation of what this game is, and there's no better, finer opposition than Barcelona for that. But in terms of a game itself and the magnitude and the jeopardy resting on the result, is it big? It's not really, and that's a consequence of the bloated format where it's actually harder to go out than it is to go through now. Newcastle absolutely should be among the top 24 teams who go through to the knockout rounds, given there is the safety of that playoff round as well. So yeah, there isn't the jeopardy resting on the game. There isn't that fear and that magnitude and that feeling around the result like there was against PSG 2 years ago when Newcastle got off to that most wonderful start. It felt like an incredible occasion coupled with a hugely significant result. Yes, a victory here for Newcastle tomorrow night, a positive result, can give them something to build on, not just in the Champions League, but going into Bournemouth at the weekend, and a victory absolutely is preferable. But does it really matter in the wider scheme of things? I hate what this new format has done in terms of the games. It almost just feels like shadow boxing until they do get to the knockout rounds, given all of the big teams now, put Newcastle in that number. Certainly all of the Premier League teams should be progressing. If they don't get the result they need or want here tomorrow night, there's another 7 chances at that. And even then you can finish 24th out of 36 teams and still go through to the playoff round. I don't like it at all. It feels like exhibition matches, and this idea that it all builds to a huge, wonderful crescendo on the final day of the league phase. We saw that last season. It doesn't work. There's loads of games and loads of goals going in, but you didn't really know what it meant, and there wasn't much jeopardy other than 1 or 2 matches here or there. So for me, you look at even the winners last year, Paris Saint-Germain, they had the awful start in the group stage. Likewise, Manchester City, they both went through. PSG went on to win the whole thing. So yeah, for me, I think there's a little bit of regret and sadness and disappointment that while I cannot wait for this game tomorrow night, it's intriguing on so many levels, and yes, it will be an occasion to remember, but does it feel as big as PSG did 2 years ago? No, it doesn't. Does it feel as big as Barcelona did 28 years ago? No, it absolutely doesn't. But nonetheless, I don't want to put too much of a downer on it. I did just want to record what I felt and what I feel about this new Champions League format, because for me, I think it doesn't work, and I think they should revert, not necessarily to the old format, but certainly to something where there's more jeopardy on matches. I really do believe that, because this for me now, for the next however many games it is, to whittle it down just to get rid of 12 teams, you can probably pick 6 of those who won't go through now. I think it's a nonsense, I really do. Now, what did Eddie Howe say on the new format? He likes it, and the reason is, I think it's entirely understandable, he wants more matches. He wants his players to become acclimatised to the Champions League, and of course more matches in the Champions League, 8 with the promise if you go through there's actually more incentive to fall into the playoff round, because there are 2 more fixtures from which you can make money and increase those revenues. Another sold out St James's Park for a knockout playoff game. So yeah, I get it from that point of view. Newcastle and the club, from a PSR perspective, they want the bloated format. It means more money, and he also sees it from the sporting side as well, the football perspective, that a team who a couple of years ago in 1 or 2 matches, certainly the Dortmund games, would have seemed a little green and did need more experience at this level. Well, yeah, 8 matches is great for Eddie Howe. He likes it. As to the question as to whether it's easier to go through, he said, well, let's see how we get on, because we saw 2 years ago when it seemed Newcastle were set for progression after those opening 2 games, the draw in Milan, then that brilliant, wonderful, memorable victory here against PSG. They found a way to go out, so he didn't want to commit when I asked him to it being easy to go through, but I get why he likes it and why, as a manager, the new format is actually preferable, because I do think in the longer term, 8 games over the course of 4 months, it allows you probably to rotate more than you'd done previously, but he is not going to rotate here tomorrow night. At least I don't think so. That was the hint I got there downstairs. And why should he really? Yes, they've got a huge game against Bournemouth on Sunday, and I honestly think if it was Union Saint-Gilloise or Benfica, whoever it may be, probably anyone but Barcelona, he may have rotated for this match. But this game, and everything around it, and the atmosphere and the potential for it to be iconic. Everything I said at the top there, that stands, but this has still got the potential to be an iconic night when you can write your name in Geordie black and white folklore. It's 28 years ago Keith Gillespie and Tino Asprilla did. So for that reason, I think Eddie will reward the players who he thinks deserves to play. They'll almost be pretty much unchanged. Now, there was a hint that Anthony Gordon could come in, and I think that's right, because Gordon cannot play down at Bournemouth on Sunday. Harvey Barnes wasn't great, really, if we're being honest. He's done okay, Barnes, so far this season, but okay probably isn't good enough to absolutely warrant justifying his place for this game. So I think Anthony Gordon might come back in, but other than that, I wouldn't expect to see many changes at all. They're going to need that best midfield of Tonali, Guimaraes and Joe Linton. The back 4, 3 clean sheets out of 4, they deserve to keep their players together. So does Nick Pope. Don't be going rotating the goalkeepers. Nick Pope has been fantastic so far. Without him against Wolves, maybe they don't get the 3 points, given his saves early on there. And Nick Woltemade through the middle. Now we're being told to wrap this up, so we'll walk and talk. I'll take you downstairs. Come on, you can see the new press room. Yeah, let's carry on recording. I'll grab my belongings. Yeah, and I think that's the right call, to keep the players who deserve the jersey. As if you are picking your best 11. Does Anthony Elanga come back in on the right? Well, no, not for me. Jacob Murphy deserves to play against Barcelona, not just for what he's done this season, but for everything he's done for Newcastle over the last couple of years. So, yeah, and Nick Woltemade. Now, will Woltemade be rested or preserved for Sunday down at Bournemouth? No, absolutely not. I think it would deflate the atmosphere of Woltemade, given everything that come out of Saturday, him scoring the only goal and the excitement around him. I think it would be a letdown if you guys walked in and Woltemade wasn't in the starting 11. So that is what I expect Eddie Howe to do. Now, on the subject of Woltemade, I asked Hansi Flick, of course, former Germany manager and a German, what he thought of his compatriot. I thought it was quite telling, really, and it spoke to Woltemade's sudden shock rise, almost, if you like. Right, which shirt? We'll do it in front of Rob Lee. There we go. Rob Lee, of course, was captain against Barcelona 28 years ago. Now, yeah, it was my question to Hansi Flick, and he more or less said I'd never heard of him prior to the past year or so when he was in charge of the German national team. Woltemade was a player who never came across his radar, and that is evidenced by his sudden rise. He wasn't even in Stuttgart's Champions League squad this time last year, so this will be Nick Woltemade's debut in this competition. And yeah, I did think it was quite telling, and did speak to the fact that Newcastle have taken a gamble, a risk. It is a lot of money. I asked Hansi Flick about the fee, and he was quite diplomatic, shall we say. And there is a feeling, the fallout from Saturday, and you read a lot around it. I thought, Philip Lahm, going to get past that. I thought, I am on a main thoroughfare here, so that might not be the only interruption. I thought Philip Lahm in The Guardian, actually, it was a really interesting article over the weekend, the former German and Bayern Munich defender. He said that when you look at Woltemade and Florian Wirtz, who have gone to the Premier League this summer, he said Wirtz, from a recruitment technical point of view, ticks every box. So go on, you can go. I don't know what the Spanish is for go on, you can go. Vamos. He said Florian Wirtz ticks every box in terms of hitting the right expectations nationally, playing in the Champions League at the right age, so he can understand why Florian Wirtz did command that fee. He said, Nick Woltemade, it's almost crazy that Newcastle have paid £69 million for someone who hasn't had those same touch points, and there's only really been a top level player, if you like, for a year or so. So I understand that, but none of the past really matters. It's about what you do going forward in the future. And certainly Woltemade here on Saturday couldn't have made a better start. And there was a few of us out last night. We actually met in an informal setting. The new chief executive, David Hopkinson. Just a quick update on that. Really impressed. I was, I won't go into too much detail around what was said because it was informal off the record. But I got a good first impression for him. He seems like a doer. And given there is a lot to do at this club, I would be encouraged by that. But we were talking amongst ourselves. We had a beer afterwards and we're saying, that Woltemade on Saturday couldn't have had a better start. Was it the perfect performance? Was it a 10 out of 10 where you looked at him and even if he hadn't scored, you would have said, wow, there goes a superstar? No, I don't think it was. I thought he was technically neat, brought others in, certainly showed promise and something to work with. But what we liked most about him was that character, something quirky about him, that he was able to wear the shirt and able to go and score the only goal. And because of that, that's why they've got to play him here tomorrow night. And I also made the point, it was almost better that it was 1-0. If they'd added a second or a third, Jacob Murphy or Harvey Barnes or whoever, it might have taken something away from him. But the fact that he's got that now, it can't ever be taken away from Nick Woltemade. On his debut, it was 1-0 and he scored the only goal. So certainly a lot of promise and a lot of excitement there around him going forward. And what better stage now does he roll on to? If you want any game to cement your name in the club's folklore, even if it is only your second game, it's back here against Barcelona tomorrow night. And that's the message for all of the players. Now, that is a fine backdrop, the old tea lady, Kath Cassidy there. I loved Kath. She even one day when my trousers split in a fairly delicate area, she even got out a sewing kit and came to my rescue. So there you go. When you talk about club legends and putting your name in the club's folklore, yeah, Kath Cassidy is right up there. That's who you would be joining. But another who was part of that fabric is Bruno Guimaraes, and we spoke to him. And I love talking to Bruno, so charismatic and engaged. And then he was there again with us. But we did address the more serious issue of Alexander Isak and his departure this summer, because I know you guys are keen to move on, and Bruno was too. But given that he is the captain and he is one of the players we believe who was less enamoured, shall we say, with Isak's conduct and his decision to go on strike, it was important we asked him about that. Now, Bruno played that with a straight back to a degree and said that football is business, and I wish him all the best going forward. But I thought the tone of the answer was telling, now saying it's about us, it's about the players who remain. And he said there in response to a question to myself that they don't want to see their best players sold in the future, and that can't be the case if they are to be successful. It felt like he was sending a little message back to the club there, and I think that's important. We've seen this summer players arrive for the first time in 3 windows. Undoubtedly, part of Isak's motivation for going was concerns over the speed and the direction of the project delivered by the ownership. And I thought Bruno to come out and say what he did was important, and certainly in him as a captain, I think Newcastle have got the right man wearing armband on and off the pitch right now. And what will happen back here tomorrow night in terms of a prediction now, this speaks to what I said at the top of the video. I don't think Barcelona will be fully pumped up for this one, knowing they've got 7 more opportunities to get through. But I think Newcastle absolutely will, and that will be the difference. Newcastle won't come off because of that reason, because there is the safety net of another 7 matches. This one is, if you flip the tournament, this one is almost their Champions League final, the first one back here in front of their own fans, given it'll be a sellout, given the identity of the opposition, given all of the emotion there is around Sir Bobby Robson, given the history of the fixture, given the fact that Tino Asprilla will be here, given the fact Eddie Howe, for me, is probably going to go out and play his strongest team there. So all of that combined, I think, will be enough to take Newcastle a victory. And as they say in Las Vegas, there is nothing sweeter than a repeater. So how about Newcastle 3, Barcelona 2. Now, quick little news insert as well, which I promised there at the top. Yoane Wissa in the desperately disappointing news, really, because Newcastle spent £125 million, all of the Alexander Isak money. I know it doesn't work like that with regards to PSR, but £125 million on 2 strikers. And in actual fact at the moment, they've only really got 2/3 of one striker, given Nick Woltemade, and Bruno Guimaraes joked about this, can only really play an hour of football at the moment, given the newfound intensity and him getting used to the Premier League. Wissa is going to be out for another month, guys, until after the international break when they return against Brighton, I think it is. But even then, is there a guarantee he comes back for that? Perhaps not. Knee injuries, as we've seen with Sven Botman, can be delicate. They can be complicated. So that was the update there on Yoane Wissa, at least another month out until after the October international break. And that is bad news because Nick Woltemade, as we saw on Saturday, does need someone to share the load with in the isolation of the next 1, 2, 3 weeks until he does get more up to speed. So the news on Wissa isn't good. It isn't good at all, and that's desperately disappointing given the pursuit of him. And this was a player who hadn't missed any football in 2, 3, 4 years at Brentford, to come in and before he's even kicked the ball for the club or even trained with his teammates, to be out for 4, 5, 6 weeks. Well, wow, that is a blow. Now, we don't want to end on a negative like that, do we? No. And we've got the game back here tomorrow night to look forward to. And I know I said at the top there it was going to be a bigger occasion than it was game. Maybe I'm talking absolute rubbish. Maybe it will be both. And I really, really can't wait. I hope you guys are watching, whether you're lucky enough to have a ticket or watching it wherever you are. Yeah, if you go to school in Scotland, you might actually be here. Yeah, I'm going to leave that in. Yeah, I'll put the link in the description below the line, by the way, to 2 pieces I've written this week. One, an investigation into the latest on Newcastle's ticket situation, and also interviews with Keith Gillespie and Tino Asprilla. Yes, the inside story of their love affair forged 28 years ago on a night here against Barcelona. Who will it be tomorrow night? Maybe in 20 years' time we'll be doing interviews with Nick Woltemade and Jacob Murphy. That would certainly be fun, wouldn't it? So like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you back here tomorrow night when I think I'll be reflecting on a Newcastle victory. Okay, take care, guys. Bye-bye.